and mute myself and have fun. I will enjoy it.
Just allow all of our attendees to enter the room before we get started here. All right, well, welcome everyone to an exciting collaboration between Shared Studios and TAPS, the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. Shared Studios brings together diverse perspectives from around the globe for transformative conversations in both immersive and virtual environments. I'm Brandon Furter. I'm the Director of Global Community for Shared Studios, and I'll be moderating today's event. A partnership with TAPS to discuss global practices for mourning and grieving lost loved ones, from traditional burial practices in the US to the traditional Mexican celebration of Dia de Muertos, where families gather to remember their deceased loved ones. Each culture honors, remembers, and grieves the dead differently. Today's discussion examines such practices to discover those forms of mourning that are ideal for dealing with loss, and to learn more about how we can more effectively deal with grief in our own lives. Joining me to moderate today's discussion is Augustine Achu, Program Associate for TAPS and our TAPS Portal Curator, as well as Tomas Ramirez, our Mexico City Portal Curator. Augustine, if you could take this moment to introduce us all to TAPS President and Founder Bonnie Carroll and to the TAPS mission, that would be great.
Thank you, Brandon, for that introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Augustine Achu. I'm the TAPS Portal Curator. And today we're gathered to talk about a very beautiful event and tradition in the Mexican, in Mexico City and in the whole of Mexico. And as we all know, the Day of the Dead, very similar to what the Catholics have as the All Souls Day. So this topic today, as timely as it is, we're going to learn a few key ways of talking about deceased loved ones, without opening old wounds. How has the Mexicans and all those that follow this tradition been able to navigate this thin line between remembering their deceased loved ones and without opening old wounds? So without further ado, I will introduce to you the president and founder of Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, Bonnie Carroll. She is going to tell us a little about TAPS, and then Brandon will introduce our guest speakers to us today. Bonnie.
Great, Augustine. Thank you so much. And it's so good to be here with everyone. This is a wonderful program that we have planned. But before I begin speaking about the Day of the Dead, I wanted to share a little bit about TAPS for those of you who may be new to our organization. TAPS is the national organization for all those grieving the death of a military loved one. We have wonderful partnerships across America with other organizations supporting all those who are bereaved. And we have great partnerships internationally where we've been able to come together and collaborate with others who are honoring their loved ones. We learn so much from each other, and I'm excited to have some of our team and partners from around the world with us to share with you the traditions and to offer insights. So let's start out now learning more a little bit about the Day of the Dead. It's a Mexican holiday celebrated there and elsewhere. It's associated with the Catholic celebrations of All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day. Yesterday and today are the dates of this festival, and it's our honor to bring this presentation to the TAPS Institute for Hope and Healing, exploring unique views of life and death and what transcends the physical. The multi-day holiday involves family and friends gathering to pray for and remember those friends and family members who've died. It's commonly portrayed as a day of celebration rather than mourning. The festivity has become a national symbol, and in 2008, UNESCO inscribed the tradition in the representative list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity in Mexico. On the Day of the Dead, people traditionally go to cemeteries to be with the souls of their departed. They build private altars containing the favorite foods and beverages of a loved one, as well as photos and memorabilia of the departed. The intent is to encourage visits by the souls, so the souls will hear the prayers and the comments of the living directed to them. Celebrations can take a humorous tone as celebrants remember funny events and anecdotes about the departed. This isn't really so much unlike the visits our TAPS families make to their loved ones' grave sites. And it's wonderful to hear that these traditions exist around the world, remembering loved ones and celebrating lives lived. So I hope you enjoyed today's program, exploring the tradition of the Day of the Dead in Mexico. Now it's my pleasure to turn the program back over to our shared studios colleague, Brandon Ferderer. Branda, and I think Brandon, either you or Augustine are going to take it from here.
Yeah, I think we'll do this together. We'll work together on this. But thank you, Bonnie, and thank you for providing some context for understanding the Day of the Dead today. And we're also going to hear of some funeral and grieving practices from a guest in Nigeria. And we're going to hear from experts at TAPS on how various practices for grieving might actually help us in thinking through the losses of our own loved ones and moving forward. So without further ado, I want to welcome all of our guests today. We'll start with Martin Obasi, the president of the Emerging Foundation, Pro-Life and Advocacy, Relief and Protocols, a self-driven mission to promote Christian humanism and redignification of the human person. Welcome, Martin. And Martin, you're joining us from Nigeria, correct? Oh, you're on mute.
Not really. I'm here with you in the United States. I'm in California
wonderful.
at the moment.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us. We also, is Felipe, was he able to join? Yes, we have Felipe Herrera. He studied languages at ISIT with a focus on languages connection to culture. As part of the program, he guided tours in several museums in Mexico City, exploring the history of Mexico's national identity and its evolution. And he's here today to help us learn more about the Mexican holiday of Day of the Dead. It looks like he's connecting to audio still, but welcome, Felipe. Also, we have Emily Munoz. She joined the TAP staff in 2014 following 7 years of volunteer service as a Good Grief Camp group leader, as she outfitted young survivors in super Coper capes. Is that okay? Super Coper capes at the National Seminar. She also worked on behalf of veterans and military families at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and for the Department of Veteran Affairs. A believer in the need for mental and physical connection and resilience, Emily uses her training in multiple fitness modalities to shape and inform TAPS programming for seminars, workshops, special events, and women's empowerment programs. Welcome, Emily. And last but certainly not least, we have Erin Jacobson, co-director, Women's Empowerment and Senior Advisor, TAPS Outreach and Engagement. Erin is a grief professional with over a decade of experience in the nonprofit space. She came on with TAPS in 2011, building transformative programming within the retreat and seminar programs with an emphasis on women's empowerment, art, mindfulness, and nature-based healing. Welcome, Erin. And welcome, everybody. I'm so excited to dive into some of the different ways that we mourn the loss of our loved ones and think through how we might more effectively grieve that loss. I want to begin with just a question for everybody to kind of set the stage for our conversation today. And that is, can each of you tell us briefly how you either celebrate or grieve the dead in your culture and how these practices might be unique to your particular culture? From there, we'll kind of dive into the details, but if we could start with just a bit of an overview. And Erin, we'll start with you.
Thank you. It's great to be here with everybody. You know, within the culture here in the United States of America, we are a varied population. We have so many different, cultures that are here also in this melting pot. But there's some very standard things that we usually do, when a loved one has died. We usually will have some kind of either a funeral or a celebration of life ceremony. And people do it in different ways. Some people, it is much more about really looking to honor the life in a way through either a religious service or maybe a service at the gravesite or, through cremation. But for others, it's really looking at celebrating the life they had and trying to bring a joyous approach to it. We do a lot that has to do with memorializing our dead, specifically also in the military community, which our program really serves those who have died in the military. And with that, there is a lot of ritual that does come about, not only in the actual funeral, but also as years go on, there are different ways that we memorialize our loved ones. Some of our practices have lingered on since the Victorian age, where we used to do a lot of rituals around death with wearing, black, and then we would wear gray, and, have things like tokens, where we carry people's hair and these things. And we don't quite do that anymore, but there are things that linger, such as, we in the military, a lot of times we'll wear bracelets. We have these memorial bracelets for our loved ones. And those are something that we carry. Also, something that is kind of carried over from the Victorian age is just the emphasis on plants and flowers and ways that we either will bring flowers to the funeral, but also like we plant a lot of things. Like there is a popular practice to plant trees in honor of our loved ones. And so that, that life continues on, and you can see that in the seasons and different aspects like that.
Nice, thank you. Yeah, I'm thinking of, and one thing I want to explore as we move through the conversation is the whole idea around ritual and the way that it serves various functions within our culture. And one of those things being as a touchstone for us to come together and mourn the loss of our loved ones and come together with those who are still living. Felipe, can we test, is your audio working? Oh, I can't hear you. It looks like he's still struggling with his audio, but maybe Tomas, can you give us just a little bit of a quick overview of some of the unique practices that occur in Mexico?
Yeah, of course. As already some of them were mentioned, most of them happen during these days, Day of the Dead, which is very unique celebration that we have in Mexican culture. It's the mix of several traditions. It's the mix of ancient traditions that we had from ancient pre-Columbian cultures. And it was mixed with some traditions from Christianity that arrived with the Spaniards, and that became the Day of the Dead. So there are contrasts in between the two of them. For pre-Columbian cultures, for example, it is mostly when somebody dies, they actually don't go to heaven or hell, but they go to live another life, afterlife, what will be called. As for example, in Christianity, it's another life, but in heaven or hell. No? So that's a big contrast in what we have in our culture. We do like to honor them in these days. As it was said, every day is specifically indebted to either the young kids or the souls of the young kids, the souls of the lost souls, the souls of the people who didn't have anybody in life, or the souls of the adults. So each day we honor one of these days. Even pets are honored. Pets are very important in honoring in Day of the Dead. And there is talking about that, there is a very fun fact that according to the story of Day of the Dead and the tradition of Day of the Dead, it's the journey. When someone dies, you have a journey to fulfill, to go to the other world that in our culture is called Mictlan. So the Mictlan could be defined as the other world. And it is a series of journeys that last for a very long time. And when the soul comes back, it needs to do that same travel, but backwards, right? So it's very, very long. That's why it takes a whole year for a soul to come back. And kind of like the reward will be this type of offering that we do with their favorite things. So favorite drinks, favorite foods, favorite everything. And the fun fact is that the most important animal in that story, and the one that helps the soul to actually, like go through the other world, it's a dog. I don't know if you see, if you know the hairless dogs called Xolo Squintles. They're a Mexican breed. So these dogs are, it kind of like reminds me of other cultures, like in Egypt, where they would say that cats help to go to to help souls go to the underworld. In Mexico will be dogs. So these dogs will, from the moment you die, they will help you cross through the underworld, and then they will bring you back. So it's a very it's very comforting for families and for people to know that their loved ones would be visiting them for a night. It's not something spooky, or it's not something that, oh my God, we're gonna see ghosts at night and we're gonna get spooked by people or by ghosts. It's more like we are opening our homes again to those that we loved in when they were alive, and we are honoring their memory when they were dead, because they are still with us. And you can also put offerings to people that probably you didn't know. For example, some people even do it for deceased singers, or deceased movie stars or something like that.
Or Walter Mercado.
Yeah, for example, it can be Walter Mercado. Like when David Bowie died a couple of years ago, I put a picture of David Bowie in my altar. I did it with Amy Winehouse as well, because it is not just the people it's about honoring everyone that it's serving like a purpose in another life, and then welcome in your house so they can bring that like hope, and they can help you with the way you are dealing with your life right now, and they can just like enjoy by having a drink from your offer or tasting something from the food that you prepare. So that is like a big context in it. Of course, it depends on the part of Mexico where it's celebrated. It's very different depending on the state, but that's more likely the idea.
Yeah, and I want to return, especially Aaron, when we bring you in later to talk through some of the grieving practices that are most effective for folks dealing with loss. I want to return to this idea, Tomas, of the journey away and the journey of the soul back, and the way that creates a connection between ourselves and maintains a connection between ourselves and our lost loved ones. Martin, I was hoping that you could tell us, I know that you're joining us to share some of the practices, some traditional Nigerian practices regarding grieving loved ones.
Yes, actually, I think we are timed. We're so limited with time to actually explore the rich cultural practice, what forms, the conditions for our funeral exercises. Anyway, but I would just simply say that the consciousness of this afterlife, the consciousness in every individual of this afterlife, and the possible reunion of humanity sometime after this life too, influences the decision of every individual to live a kind of a life worth living. On the other hand, I will also say that the unconsciousness of, the life or the possibility of a reunion of man after life also forms the basis of one deciding on the kind of life he chooses to live. So I'm trying to say that we have unexamined lives. We also have life worth living. So these two concepts informs, what an individual could contemplate on, could decide on in living his life. And as such, of course, Christianity has been seriously influenced the very tradition which we have. I should be talking from Igbo Biafran concept. Igbo Biafrans are in the eastern region of Nigeria, which is where I'm coming from. So we have a very unique and fantastic funeral practice. One stage is like when euthanasia is suggested. When euthanasia is suggested, at the moment when someone is in coma, we call that stage a transitional stage. The rite of passage can as well, and at that point, be ministered. So when someone is becoming unconscious, maybe after a prolonged illness, is no longer capable of walking, talking, eating, and somewhat lifeless. So an elder can be summoned. An elder or elders can be summoned, and when they are summoned, they'll be detailed about the situation. And then they will come into the house and look at the condition of this individual, and then begin to do what we call incantations, invocation of our ancestors, notifying them of an incoming visitor, an incoming guest. So they will further get some kind of traditional or local wine called the palm wine. And we have the kola nut. And this kola nut will be broken, words will be mortared. Either they'll be facing the sky, either in that same house, in that hut where the sick person is, to administer this rite of passage, a kind of clearing the way, telling them that someone is coming, a brother, a friend is coming. And then if actually this person eventually passes away, there is a particular time period or time frame with which this person can stay before he's buried. We have the 8 market days, which is approximately 2 weeks, even though we narrowed it to 4 days. We have also the 4 market days, which is 4 days. So, and within this time, there will be a moment to recall the life of this person. And as such, there are so many things that may be involved in burying a particular person, because we cannot be talking about a burial, ceremonies, funeral services, or exercises without, looking at the life the person lived. I don't know if you're getting it. So we believe in reunion. We believe in life after, in life after death. We believe in incarnation, seriously, even though the Christian tradition has influenced that concept, making us understand that, it is a place of eternal beatitude, the kingdom of heaven, where all souls will migrate to. But then we believe in incarnation. And then in believing in incarnation, this life worth living will determine on the type of life you're going to live. So if you must have compromised a certain moral, traditional principles, then you may likely suffer it in the next world you're coming in. And then it depends, because most likely you will be incarnating in the same family you're coming from, or you'll be reincarnating in any family that's related to you. You understand that? So you'll be coming in as a new person. But then there are misfortune that could come with someone who is just been born, and they will go and consult, who is this person coming into the world? Who is this person coming to us? Who is this newborn baby? We go and make what we call inquiries or investigations, consulting the chief priest, the elders, who will make their incantations, invoke the ancestors who give a revelation. This person is this old man who died so many years ago or a few years ago, you know. And then if this person carries a unique characteristics, which is similar to the other person, it could be confirmed that, yeah, this person has been reincarnated. You know, some come in as brave men, intellectually sound, very creative, you know, illustrious, dedicated, committed, with distinguished qualities, you know. So this will eventually tell you how we can, you know, a kind of celebrate any person who have died. And in summary, I want to just submit that, you know, there are taboos. There are people too on the side of unexamined life. You know, there are people who live the life that questions the ontological traditions. You know, if you must have transgressed against the law of the land, like those things considered as taboos, which are sodomy. Of course, you know what sodomy is: incest. You know, rape, bestiality. Of course, there are some other things like suicide as well.
Well, I think one thing that's interesting is the idea that all of these practices seem to revolve around the celebration of the life, even when we return to examine those who have passed. Emily, we'll end this segment with you, and then I want to return it to the Day of the Dead and get Aaron's kind of expertise on the ways in which that practice is healthy for people grieving. But go ahead.
Well, thank you so much. One thing that is so interesting to note is that, you know, one thing that everybody's mentioned, Martin spoke about it, you know, Aaron did, Tomas did, is that community involvement in burial rituals, community and family involvement in burial rituals is something that is really important. And the other too is that in almost every culture, it seems that there is a connection that can be maintained after the end of a physical life form. And across the board, no matter what tradition in which tradition you find yourself, I find the presence of that family and community are engaged. The idea that the connection to the deceased does not stop, and that there is some journey for the soul, because I think everyone's mentioned that too, after death, that I find those things profoundly reassuring. And also very universal. And, you know, one of the things that I think we work to do at TAPS, and I think at other organizations, is to normalize a conversation about death, and is to bring it into a consciousness where it is something that we understand as, you know, there's Elizabeth Kubler-Ross says death is the final stage of growth. That it is something that we can use, as Martin said, you know, to live a life that feels good and is, you know, worthy, and to honor the fact that it's none of us is going to escape it, and dealing with it and discussing it not only makes us better, but it makes us able to be more human. So one of the things that I think is really interesting, so just here's a little tidbit. Monkeys and elephants actually cover their dead. They go through a funeral ritual of, I really want to like pretend I have a trunk and like imagine how it would be, but you can just kind of imagine the effort that it takes to use your trunk and bury and cover your dead. And even that funeral ritual says that it is important. I mean, obviously they do this so they're like to keep the predators away, but that's not it, right? And so the reason why we have these funeral rituals is not just to figure out a way to care for the vessel that the human has been in, but also to take care of it. So interesting. Just wanted to also say, you know, Aaron and I and Bonnie both come from, you know, white America, And we live in a country where there is a tremendous variation of burial cultures, from Jewish Shiva to sitting Shiva to the second line celebrations in New Orleans, which are the closest to Day of the Dead parades that I can think of, which is, you know, the New Orleans jazz funeral, to the culture, which are so precious and in some ways so different of a journey, you know, to be with all the things you would need for your next life. So I did just want to kind of say that in no way do we want to also kind of sort of speak for all of the traditions in the US. Just to also say that there are some incredible ones. Okay, American burial history, just kidding. But here's the brief thing. Up until the middle of the 1800s, everyone in the US prepared their own loved ones' bodies. That's why we had a parlor. The parlor was the death room. It was so the body could be displayed. So something that's different maybe in the US is that most of that now has been professionalized. And so we are able to keep a little bit more of a distance away from death. So I think that one of the things that we are always kind of figuring out a way to balance is how do we get close enough to our loved ones to make it real, and to be a part of the experience, and then how do we you know, how are we kind to ourselves in another way of remembering them how we want them to be. So anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting, and Aaron, I wanna return to you, because listening to everyone speak, one thing that I note keeps coming back up is that in honoring our dead, we are also examining our own lives, and looking at the way that we are living in the current moment. You know, Tomas spoke of the soul's return, and they can help you through your own troubles. Martin was talking about the ways in which the honoring of the dead becomes a reflection. You know, you may be incarnated into another body based on the life that you lived, and you're now living a different life. And so I'm interested, Aaron. You know, one of the things I think that some folks struggle with who aren't familiar with the Day of the Dead is that it seems like by revisiting someone that we've lost every year, that could be a painful process. And I think, Tomas, I'll let you speak to this a little bit as well, but I think it's interesting to think about why that isn't painful. And Aaron, I know from your expertise, could you talk a little bit about why this particular way of grieving the dead is actually really beneficial for folks?
Yeah, you know, I mean, first of all, I want to echo what Emily had said about normalizing death and the process. And there, you know, the human condition, we don't want pain. We shy away from it. We try to, get away from it as much as possible. But what we do know is that when we lose someone we love, grief is the natural reaction to that. And it can get mixed up sometimes, with the idea of depression or, sadness, but it is the reaction. And so, if we are able to normalize it, if we are able to create ritual around it, whether it is celebrating ritual that is done in a larger cultural context, or it's us learning how to reframe and create new rituals for ourselves to honor our people, there is a tremendous amount of healing with that, because expression is a very important part of us understanding loss. There's so much mystery and so much that our brains can't quite comprehend when we lose someone, when we die. And one of the things that we know is that we see and experience for ourselves, we verbalize it over and over again, a story, until it becomes real, until we can understand that this is real. And with our loved ones, we want to continue to tell their stories. We want to be able to share that they have lived, that their lives continue on within us. And so, to dedicate, again, one day of the year, or also other times that we choose to continue with their legacy, there's tremendous power in that. And there's a helplessness that we feel when we lost someone we love, and not knowing how to channel that. And so, one of the things we work on a lot within our programs is helping people to feel empowered, that they can come back and continue that story. And a relationship, just because someone is no longer here in the presence of, a physical space, it does not mean that relationship is just over. it continues in different ways, and it continues and morphs into the part of our daily life. We also just, again, really encourage people to be able to take some things that, maybe it's a favorite food, maybe it's a value or a trait that our loved ones had, and looking at ways, how do we incorporate that into our day-to-day? How do we are able to speak their name? So again, these individual ways that we can do that, but again, the power of being able to step into that with a group and a larger cultural way, there's a tremendous amount of power of continuing the legacy of our people we love.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I think particularly in the American context, and I think in a lot of Western contexts in general, we have a tendency to we may have a funeral, which is a collective act, a community comes together, but after that, it's often left to individual folks to grieve the loved one, and it's not necessarily part of a larger communal practice. And so, Tomas, I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit to the role community plays in grieving, and why kind of the rituals that are part of the Day of the Dead that bring entire communities together to even you mourning and creating an altar for David Bowie. So I'm curious as to the role that larger communities play in the grieving process and the ritualization of the Day of the Dead.
Yeah, I mean, there are several ways in which we do all of the traditional grieving from Day of the Dead. One of them is the altars. And other part is that a lot of people gather in the cemeteries and graveyards and like all the places where people are buried or are serve as these places where they put, I don't know, ashes or anything like that. In these days, in some communities, they become like huge party places. But I'm not talking about like a wild party place. It's mostly like families go to visit the graveyards of their loved ones. It can be like somebody. It's mostly somebody from the family. They ornament this graveyard very, very, very big ornaments with a lot of flowers, a lot of food. People, actually, the whole family spend the day there, and even the night there, listening to music. I know there is a community in the south part of the city, in South Mexico City, which is called Tláhuac. It's a borough. And in that community, there is a part called Mizquic, where Day of the Dead plays a very important role and is very well known for their celebrations of Day of the Dead in graveyards specifically. And I've been sometimes there, and it's basically the whole town going to the community graveyard, having bands and music throughout the whole night, and remembering stories about their loved ones, and like they bring these things like sculptures made of flowers for their tombstones, and people are just there celebrating, like elder people, young people, kids, and it's like a party. Like some people might say that it's a little morbid, but I think it helps with their loss, because they feel them very close in that way, like doing something that they like and like emulating that. I think that helps with the grief and like the acceptance of the death of someone that you lost. And it's very important also to have the community around you, and you seeing that other people in your community are doing this, because that also like tells people that they are not alone, or they are not doing it alone, or they are not the only ones doing this type of practices. That it's correct to have feelings, and it's correct to engage in these practices, and I think that really helps. I mean, it's very curious that it is a whole mix of ancient traditions and Christian traditions. And that's why it's so unique, because it's basically like a thing on its own. You know, it's unique in that sense. Because due to the mix, it's a very unique thing. And yeah, community is very, very, very important. And of course, there are a lot of myths around things you need to do and things you don't need to do in Day of the Dead. But I think that most people, specifically in the South, I'm not sure about the northern states of Mexico, because I'm pretty sure that most of the northern states of Mexico are not so big in celebrating Day of the Dead, specifically due to their history. I'm pretty sure that this tradition goes further down, probably like half of the country to the south, because even some places in Central America celebrate it. I mean, Guatemala has some celebrations as well, because they were part of Mexico at some point. Some parts of Costa Rica and some parts of South America also do these type of practices in these days. Exactly, no? So I think the sense of community, specifically in Day of the Dead, it's the key element of the whole celebration, because it's like, okay, I know I have suffered loss, but also other people have suffered loss. And instead of like putting ourselves into this spiral in of blues, we are gonna like celebrate what were the best moments of that life, or the best moments that I remember with that person. And I'm also gonna, like have this person's soul to enjoy something that I am giving to him or to her, that it's food or anything that they liked. And that helps, those are little elements that helps, I think, you. But I mean, as they say, they also help, it also helps them. So it's like a give and take, give and take. You give, and then you take something from them, which is resignation, which is like moving forward, I think.
Yeah, I love that the celebration helps us understand that we are not alone, that we all grieve. I know, Augustine, you wanted to come in with some follow-up questions, and so I'll turn it over to you to ask our panelists some questions here.
Yes, thank you so much. You guys have so wonderful, tremendous insights to give us, and like Emily said, and Thomas just touched up lastly now, the community part of funeral practices, be it whatever it is like the key thing. And if I must touch on this a little from what Martin was talking about. In the Igbo tradition, be it traditionally in the native sense or in the Christian sense, community is actually the base, is everything. So when someone dies and the community doesn't want to bury the person, I mean, it's not a good thing for someone to die and just the family buries the person. Yeah, everybody wants to be witness there and say, goodbye, my friend, goodbye until we meet to part no more. So I really like that idea of the community, and that's what shows us that, hey, grief is universal, and we almost grieve almost in the same way. So my question goes to Thomas, and I think Emily can also chime in, Erin can also chime in. My question is, given this tradition in Mexico, I mean, it's an ancient tradition, maybe from the Aztec Empire, and it over time Christianity has come up, and Christianity has married over and inculturated some traditions just to make it look a little nicer and keep on practicing it. So I want to know how this mix, and let me call it marriage, has been able to transform this, give it a better look, and kind of like move it a little further. Because I remember very well that last year or last 2 years in my church, my parish priest inside the church set up an altar for for his parents, for his late parents. And, you know, he wouldn't desist, you know, from telling us all about, you know, the Day of the Dead event in his own. He's not even from Mexico. I think he's from El Salvador, and they do it there, and they set up those altars. So I want to know how, you know, over time, this marriage has been able to like move things to the next. And also very importantly, like we talked about, the community. How has the Day of the Dead event helped people, both family and community wise, to heal, to grieve and heal in the case of someone that died, you know, in some kind of way. Maybe they died too early, or maybe they died in a certain kind of way, a condition of death or something like that. How has this been able to help them to embrace and normalize that their deceased, their loved one is normal with them?
Tomas?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So I think that, you know, death and the meaning of death is like it's hard for people. It doesn't matter like the where which part of the world. It's hard to suffer the loss of someone, and the way of grieving, it's different, I think, depending on the cultures. And what we have done in Mexico and in Latin America with this tradition of Day of the Dead. I'm going to talk specifically from the place where I am from, which is southern Mexico. And in southern Mexico, in Oaxaca, I'm from Oaxaca State. And over there, it's very, very Christian, very Catholic. It's very Catholic, but we also have very, very like attached roots of in the case where I'm from the Zapotec culture, which is the center of Oaxaca. And over there, this Day of the Dead tradition lasts 6 days. It's not 2 days; it's 6 days, and like I remember a lot what my grandfather told me and my grandparents used to tell me is that you just don't honor your loved ones, you honor all of the dead. So that's why we have 6 days of celebrating this, because it's a way of accepting that death, it's around us and that it's going to be around us forever, and that it's a part of our life. And but there is more to it, you know, and somebody is gonna do that for you when you die, because you are not forgotten. Even if you die, somebody's gonna remember you and honor you, even if they are not your family. And I think that's something that got really stuck with me, to like not just honor your loved ones, or not just honor the death of your loved ones, but honor death itself as a part of life, and honor death itself as something that will happen to everyone eventually. And every deceased person deserves the same type of respect as another one. So of course the attachment, it's very important, but it's kind of like there are so many people out there that, you know, died, and nobody, like there is nobody there to remember them. So it's nice to put a little part of yourself to honor these people. I don't practice like religion a lot, but I know the practices that are done in churches, and I know that it's a very specific case in Latin America and in Mexico, that the Catholic Church and Christian churches specifically allows these images and this imagery of death to be allowed in temples, because it's something that I think goes that doesn't go in the line of the traditional Catholicism or traditional Christianity. So I think that these are exactly like the ways that the religion evolves and adapts to the space and to the people that are around them, and at the end it helps them for their resignation and for their spiritual life and spiritual guidance, which is at the end what religion is about. And yeah, it's very interesting that some people, it is very important for some people to put imagery, for example, of saints in altars, right? Because there are saints and hundreds of saints that, serve a different purpose. And probably people, believe in that. I remember there is my grandmother and my aunt, like I said, I'm not so very keen on religion, but my aunt always told me that they always put imageries of their nieces and granddaughters and grandsons to I don't know the term in English if it's correct, but it's like the lost souls of purgatory. It's a saint. So they always like tell them to like protect us. And I kind of like I believe that. I started reading a little bit about what was that. And it's basically like souls of people who, are just lost in purgatory, and they are type of a saint. And that is also, like I think we believe here that those people actually, or those souls actually protect you when you are walking on the street alone. So that's also a part of the culture. I think it's very interesting to see how sometimes, according to the place, these stories like come into shape to help the community, because like it serves a purpose in that community. It makes sense in that community, and then in another community they might twist something else, but it's in essence the same thing.
Well, it's interesting, Tomas, that you say that, because we have, and I'm going to turn it over to some questions from our attendees. But one thing that I'm noticing in the chat, if you've seen as attendees are writing in, a lot of them are saying, one person wrote in and said that in Japan, it's not, the Day of the Dead, but they have similar practices. Someone else wrote in that in Egypt, they also have some similar practices. And so all of these things kind of adapting to the place. But I want to turn to a question here. One, which I think is interesting in this moment. Tomas, someone is asking if the pandemic has caused any restrictions because for the Day of the Dead, and how people are compensating for the absence of that community, given that community is so important to the practice.
Well, yeah, I mean, the graveyards were closed because it's impossible to keep a safe distance in graveyards. So I think this is the very, very first year in the whole my life. and like, even my parents have told me that even in their life that we cannot go out to celebrate Day of the Dead to the streets. But Day of the Dead, it's celebrated also at homes. And every Mexican household has an altar. If like, like every family does an altar, even if it's a small one or a very big one, but you do an altar or do a type of altar. And I think that's the way that people are celebrating Day of the Dead. In Mexico City, we are very big, and most of the places we are really big in dressing up as skulls and going out to the street and like, just be there the whole night. I know in some places that happen, but in some places, I mean, yeah, right now we cannot go out in the street, but yeah, it's happening. I mean, it's a tradition that needs to happen.
Are you setting up altars in the house and around the house to kind of like, show it out there? Hey, we're still remembering you people. Because I remember the movie Coco, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that movie says.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I mean, this year, the city government did something that I think it's very cool. And I went to participate in an altar. I brought flowers to altars. There are public altars. This year specifically, there were 3 that were very, very cool ones, very specific ones. One was to all of the victims of COVID-19. So that's in the atrium of downtown, which is very, very close here. And it's a big, big altar. And like people bring the photos of the deceased ones of COVID-19. Some people bring, like like imageries of doctors, imageries of pandemic, because like they are remembering like victims, not only in Mexico, but I mean, everywhere. There is another altar for people that have gone missing throughout the year, especially like women that have been missing throughout the year. So I've seen that one too. And then there is another one of victims of violence in the LGBT community that suffered some violence this year, and we are also like doing altars for that. So it's very cool that the city, you know, allows these altars to be done publicly, and everybody can just go and leave a little part of it and like be part of these altars. Like you don't need to be part of that community to honor them, because they also deserve respect for being dead. And yeah, I've seen that some people ask about like the importance of saints, and for example, Lady of Guadalupe, which is the Virgin in Mexico, and it's very important. Like those type of imageries is something that you will see. I mean, it's one important element of the altar is a cross made of flowers, which, you know, at the end comes from that tradition, from the Catholic tradition, but that needs to be there. The altar needs to be in levels. A good altar will be in levels. You start on the ground, and then it's kind of like a pyramid. So it has, some altars have 3, some others have 7, and those represents, you know, you start from the underground, from what it could be hell to heaven. It's kind of like a representation of that, and there are different levels that the soul needs to pass and do a journey. So they pass through hell, purgatory, land, and then they go to heaven. So it depends on the culture, but yeah, most of them have levels. So yeah, there is a whole imagery, and I think we can spend hours talking about like the meaning of each level. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't help but think about when you said that there was an altar to persons who have passed as a result of COVID-19. As we think about, Aaron, you know, you were talking about, and Tomas, you touched on this, that when we grieve in these ways, we become connected to a community, and we understand that we're not alone. And this altar to those who have passed as a result of COVID-19 makes me think about the value of a nation or a community's collective grieving over events that have transpired. And I know that all of us are in a particular moment right now experiencing this together, and what would it mean for us to all grieve together and to grieve with those who have lost loved ones as a result of the pandemic. We have 2 minutes remaining. And so I want to end with you, Aaron, just any kind of lessons that you might give to people who are grieving, yeah, just from these various practices. If there's anything from your expertise you might recommend for folks who are grieving and experiencing loss now or even in the past or in the future.
I mean, I think the first part is be kind to yourself. You know, it's grief is not a linear process. It comes and goes up and down, and it just does what it does. And, you know, especially as we're talking about how COVID has affected our rituals. The other thing that's so important is that we have these rituals, and yet they're living things. They're things that we can continue to adapt. They're things that we can continue to allow ourselves to come back to the heart of why we do these rituals, why we do these practices. It's because we want to honor our loved ones. It's because we are continued to be connected to them. I would say to, again, give each other permission to show up in the spaces where we need to speak their names, to normalize it for each other. And as everyone has said, you know, multiple times, community is really the place where we can find ourselves. We can find, not love ever to replace the people we have loved before, but we can also grow and have new love come into our lives.
What a wonderful way to end. I want to thank everybody, all of our attendees. I believe we had close to 70 people attend today, so that's fantastic. Thank you all for joining us. thank the panelists for providing unique perspectives on different traditions and rituals around grieving and loss. And thank you always to the TAPS community for providing, we've partnered with TAPS for some time now, providing all of us with an opportunity to really think through grieving and loss, to come to terms with trauma. The work that you all are doing is absolutely amazing, and we appreciate every time we come together to learn from your expertise. Thank you so very much for a wonderful conversation. And everybody have a wonderful afternoon or morning or evening, depending on where you are located in the world.
All righty. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.